For the context, he was written off TV for AEW last Wednesday when MJF attacked him. This was really the first week of their alliance on screen. Done already. But now there's reports on where William Regal's future might ride.
So basically, this all started following AEW Dynamite last week when MJF laid out William Regal with the brass knuckles from behind. Well, it really dates back from even the previous week when Jon Moxley told William Regal to leave. Rumors started to circulate that William Regal could be on his way back to WWE. Kind of playing into those rumors, Triple H put out the video ahead of War Games with all of William Regal's War Games, rally cries over the years. And then Dave Meltzer suggested last weekend that Regal's contract was 1 year, but then he walked that back on Twitter. He said it was for 3 years and that he won't be going anywhere anytime soon. Then PW Insider said that it's expected that William Regal is heading back to WWE very soon. Fightful Select kind of confirmed those rumors by saying that William Regal's deal in the company was up this month. And then it kind of had a avalanche effect of other rumors from that, being that, did he sign a 9-month deal? There are those within WWE that believes that he had an out in his contract. What the out was, we're not sure. It may be that if Triple H was in power, he could go back, or he had a 9-month type of deal or something like that.
Who the hell would put stipulations like that in a contract?
I mean, if I'm Tony Khan and he suggested that, I'm be like, hey, sure, I'm not expecting it to happen in 3 months. But yeah, it all of that is kind of like where we're at right now. There's been other kind of reports from that. It's all been confirmed, but by everyone, that William Regal is officially heading back to WWE. He's done with AEW. The angle with MJF was his official write-off. There are those within AEW that was confused with Tony Khan's decision to put so much heat on someone that was on his way out of the company, and they thought that there was other ideas that were pitched for MJF versus Jon Moxley at Full Gear that could have worked better, and it kind of leaves them in a kind of compare like a weird position, because Jon Moxley is one of your top baby faces. He never gets revenge on the manager that turned on him. MJF is your top heel. He just turned more heel by turning on another heel, when it would have been more effective if William Regal was still with the Blackpool Combat Club. And then all this heat is put on someone that is on their way out, and you're using it in a way that can be helpful for the company in setting up the MJF and Bryan Danielson feud, but you could have kind of got there a little bit easier way. So it's kind of all the ramifications that this move is going to have on AEW as well as WWE. I mean, for William Regal, in my opinion, it's a no-brainer. He never wanted to leave WWE. He was released by the Vince McMahon regime. He's comfortable there. He knows the system there. His son is there in the developmental system. Triple H is one of his best friends in the business. He can have the position that he always really wanted, and he was kind of being trained for when he was in NXT, and that's being kind of the head of recruitment for the main roster now. So I think it all makes the world of sense if you're William Regal.
You also need to touch on the reported ideas that Regal, he's got that same vibe as CM Punk, that, I'm old and I'm working with kids. Suggested immaturity backstage potentially that's ruffled his feathers.
This was reported by EC3, the former WWE talent.
Reported by EC3.
That's why I'm gonna be honest, Alex, and I work.
It's worth noting for context.
I work for the outlet that this was on. It was on Sportskeeda Wrestling. It was the Wrestling Outlaw Show with Vince Russo, Dr. Chris Featherstone, and EC3. And EC3 said when William Regal went to the company, the word was that he felt like he immediately regretted his decision, and that there was a maturity issue among the management in AEW. And he felt like the people there, didn't listen to his, feedback. And that was kind of confirmed by, in a way, by an AEW talent in Brian Pillman Jr., who kind of responded to a tweet that kind of addressed that. I think it was by Justin LaBar of I forgot his outlet, but I think that was his name that first said it. And Brian Pillman Jr. responded to it, and he was like, that wasn't kind of the whole thing. He's like, there was people that did listen to William Regal, but maybe there was people that didn't. And he said he never felt like there was enough people that was there for like William Regal when he was, doing his classes and trying to teach people stuff. He said there would always be the regulars like himself, Wheeler Yuta, and Lee Moriarty, but he thought that more people would go to him more than those three.
Right. So as you know, with my new job, I've been less in the daily news wrestling cycle, as it were, picking bits up. But when I was still doing it day by day, I had good chats with Regal. Certainly a lot of chats around when he departed NXT, and obviously speaking with Regal himself. So I'm going to try my best to add context to a lot of what I hear here, and little different bits and pieces. Because I feel like there's quite a few bits to touch on. Number one, and you said it himself, he didn't want to leave WWE. He was very happy in that role of nurturing talent and kind of presiding over those who came through the doors of NXT, which, in my opinion, had been mega successful during his tenure in WWE. He basically had to go because they were changing NXT, right? And I heard this from Regal himself, from many others within. If you are, it's like, what's the best analogy that I can give? I'm running a football team, and SP3 takes it over, and he wants to do his own thing. You can't really keep the person from the old regime that all of the players look up to the most. How are you going to get your points across if you're still hanging on to that last regime, right? It doesn't really make sense. Regal knew his time was up, basically, as soon as Triple H was on the outs. He was ill. But as soon as he was away and Vince kind of took the 2.0 mantle, it was only going to go one way, right? He knew that, and he kind of accepted it early on. As you mentioned, his son, Bailey Matthews, as he's known, in NXT UK, presumably will be a part of NXT Europe when it launches in the new year. Again, hearing good things about that. So the way they're prepping for it anyway. So that's kind of another added wrinkle to the story where I think he was frustrated to kind of be like, leaving him behind, or he just convinced him to come over from bloody Japan. Anyway, that's a wrinkle to the story. So, Regal didn't really want to go. When he gets to AEW, though, and again, I've spoken to many people off the record. On the record, though, guys like Ricky Starks, who had a lot of things to say about these classes before the show, Regal himself, they would get there 11 a.m. TV day. That's a long fucking day, by the way. 11 a.m. they would get there, and then they would have sessions in the ring, right? Him and Danielson, for the most part, teaching people. And it was a no phones rule. You want to come be involved. You can't film shit. You can't whatever, right? You have to come do the session. And as far as I was aware, there was a lot of younger talent that did that. So I wonder if these comments from EC3, let's take them at face value for a second. I think maybe some people on Twitter or otherwise maybe threw a blanket on them, as if like AEW as a whole. But as far as I knew from Regal himself as well, like a lot of young talent made use of those sessions. So I don't think he's crapping on young talent not taking his advice. I think the key thing in ECW's phrase was the management, right? That it was maybe immature, and he maybe didn't have as much influence in that company as he did in WWE, which would take some adjusting to, right? Like he's gone from the biggest wrestling company in the world, where he has a lot of pull on who they hire and who they don't. And that kind of molds the future of the company to, it doesn't seem that he had that same divine power in AEW. So I can comprehend how that would be an adjustment for him, but that's also something that, he should prepare for, right? You're not going to walk in and start running a company. So I can see lots of different sides here, but I did know, Ricky in particular had told me some stories about the Regal teaching people around the ring, and there was a lot of the younger talent, you mentioned them earlier, that certainly did take him up on those lessons. And I know it was like a big theme of TV days in AEW. So where we are now, though, I really loved the Blackpool Combat Club. We were all puzzled as the story began to unfold anyway. It was kind of like, all right, well, where does this leave the BCC? Regal turning on Moxley, but Danielson still kind of ride or die for Regal. And I understand why they're doing that if we're going Danielson, MJF, or I get it, but what's the BCC now, right? I think I saw Claudio Castagnoli talking, I can't remember who the interview was with, but I read it today. And he says they're going to have some meeting or something like this to see what's going on, what's moving forward. Obviously, you've got Wheeler Yuta that was really kind of getting a great rub being in there. But who knows what's going on with that storyline right now? They've kind of jettisoned it to where Regal was then turned again, I guess, right? Like, and then he's been turned on, and now he's out of the. In all intents and purposes, he's written out. Like everyone can see that. How quickly is he going back to WWE? I don't know, right? Like,
well, it would PW Insider today came out with the report that it's expected that he's negotiated his contract with them now, and that he will start in his backstage role with the company after next year.
Right. Well,
after the new year,
there would have to be some sort of out in the contract. There would have to be. Well,
I believe in the report they also made note that it's for a backstage role and it's a non-TV role. And I think that might be a part of what AEW negotiated.
Well, it might
get him out of his deal.
But also, I don't think that's the most pivotal reason WWE would bring him back, right? Like, it is what he did off screen that was more important.
No, I'm talking about from the AEW standpoint.
No, I get that, but what I'm saying is that I don't think that would have been a sticking point anyway for WWE, right? Like, they're not like, oh, we need him back as GM on NXT. You know, it's great, as great as that was. I'm saying for Bix was debating this on Twitter yesterday, and it's kind of like, who signs a deal for 9 months? I don't see that being something. He must have had some sort of clause where he could leave, or he had, for whatever reason. I sincerely doubt it's if Triple H comes to power reason, but he must have had a way that he could break his contract, and he obviously has chosen to do so. But I've spoken to Triple H many times about this, Regal himself as well. That relationship that they had, like, it's very difficult for people to understand. I don't know if people have read Regal's autobiography or how familiar they are with his story, but obviously very strong struggles with drugs and like his career being on the rails and whatnot. And really when he found a lot of purpose in retirement was with NXT and Triple H's vision, right? And he kind of found his new place in wrestling. His drug was behind him, but I just mean his career had come to an end, didn't really know what he was going to do. And here we are. He really found his calling. And Triple H had a great setup there. Samoa Joe was being welcomed into that fold, to kind of learn off Regal. Kind of surprised he didn't end up in the BCC in some ways. But, more on that another time. But still, I think once Triple H came to power, it was puzzling that Regal left WWE in the first place to everyone, right? Like, it was kind of like, what? But as we mentioned earlier, it was purely a Vince McMahon power thing. And that's what it was. But in terms of a Triple H spearheaded leadership, I think without Regal in there, it's just peculiar. Like, people don't understand how important he was to what Triple H did in his kind of meteoric rise with NXT. So I understand it. I don't know if it's as salacious as what people are making out. I feel like working with kids and they're just kind of piling into the CM Punk aspect of it. I don't know. Maybe it'll all come out in the wash. Regal's never, he's got his own podcast and he's never been shy to say what he thinks.